Hey guys, all right. I hope everybody's having a good day so far. I want to thank all of you for having me here today. Come and do this guest lecture. I'm really excited about it. For those of you that don't know, my name is Marc Lafleur. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of True Local. And today I want to talk to you guys about leadership under the age of 30. I'm 29, so I'm getting close to that point, but there are a lot of unique challenges that founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs have to deal with when you have that sort of stigma of being young. And for me, navigating a lot of these different challenges was a lonely journey, and it was something that I probably could have saved a lot of mistakes had I known, or had I had someone I could talk to about this type of stuff, or someone I could relate to. I've always had a lot of mentors in my life, but they were always in different stages of their life. They were never just a couple years ahead. And for me, I love doing talks like this, and I love sharing what I've learned in the past, 7 years of building businesses. And if any of that can relate to you, then, that's perfect. And if, there's anything that out of this can help save you guys from some trouble down the line, then, I've done my job here today. So getting started, what you're going to learn today is some of the key lessons that I've learned while building my business to 55 employees, $20 million annual recurring revenue. We've scaled across the country, and most recently, we've just launched in the US as well, Illinois being our first market. So it's really exciting time for us, and this is something that we've accomplished in 4 years. And there are a lot of things that, as I look back on it, we still have a really, really long way to go and a lot of things that we want to accomplish. But looking back on it, there are some key learnings that I pulled out that I want to share with you guys. And like I said before, if any of that type of stuff helps you guys on your journey, then I'll feel really good about that. So before we dive into it, I figure might as well give you guys a little bit of an understanding of who I am, just because I think that will help make this make a little bit more sense. So in terms of my professional career, like I mentioned, for the past 4 years, co-founder and CEO of True Local. After about 2 years of doing that, I got into consulting primarily on digital marketing and brand strategy. The idea for True Local actually came about because we wanted to prove that with a strong brand, you can make any business successful as long as the business lives up to the brand that you're creating. And the whole idea there is that it's not hard to make a cool brand. I'll tell you right now, if you hop on Fiverr, if you go on Upwork, if you find any freelancer to make you a cool logo, a cool catchphrase, some cool color schemes, and you get a cute little Insta page or Unbounce or anything at all done up, you can make a pretty cool looking brand. However, building a cool brand is one part of it. Making sure the business lives up to the brand that you're creating is a whole other thing. So I've done a lot of consulting on helping people understand that and really understand what a brand is, because to me, a brand is a really simple explanation. And I think a lot of people struggle with this. To me, a brand is how people feel when they think about your company. All right. So I've been doing a lot of speaking on that, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Throughout that time, I was able to go out to Austin, Texas, San Francisco, work with various startups, a lot of people in the real estate space as well. A lot of those guys struggle with their brand and how to differentiate between them and other competitors in the space. A lot of real estate agents all look pretty much the same. And then most notably, I was fortunate enough to run into Naveen Jain at this amazing conference that I went to in San Diego. For those of you that don't know, Naveen Jain has founded Viome, which is a at-home genetic testing kit. He's a billionaire, incredibly successful individual, and I was fortunate enough to do a 2-week audit of his digital strategy and provide some recommendations. So that was something that was really exciting for me. As the CEO of True Local, I've experienced every aspect of running a business, and for any entrepreneur, any founder who's leaning into that leadership stage or leaning into that founder stage or CEO stage, you will touch every single part of it. A CEO is a jack of all trades through and through. So some of the things, I always kind of like to list them out because it still boggles my mind that we've been through all this. But obviously, branding and digital marketing, but right now, data informatics is huge for us. Team management, legal and accounting, fundraising, angels and VCs, so both of them across the board. We're now starting to get into some PE, so private equity stuff, which is new for me. Market expansion, international expansion, hiring, recruiting, fulfillment, logistics, team development, mentorship, management training. These are all different areas that you are going to have to deal with and have a base level of understanding of if you're looking to start a business. My core strengths have always been, like I mentioned, on the digital marketing brand strategy side of things. On the digital marketing side, I'm probably starting to get a little rusty as I've been focusing more on business operations and scaling the company. But brand strategy is something that I'll always try to stay sharp on. Most recently, I was fortunate enough to be part of this amazing retention program put on by partners at Andreessen Horowitz and Greylaw Capital Partners. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but some of the biggest VCs in the Valley and pretty much in the world. But it was put on by leaders at companies like Uber, Pinterest, HubSpot. There was the head of growth was one of the members of my group, and the program's called Reforge, and I would highly, highly recommend it. So once again, we run a subscription-based business. Retention for us is huge. So that's something that was I really wanted to double down on. So when I look back on my professional career, these are some of the highlights that to me have been jumping out. But with that being said, I got to give you guys a little bit of a background on where I started, because it wasn't all cool highlight reels like that. This is who I was going into high school. Okay, so I think a lot of people assume that if you're successful in business, you've had all of your stuff figured out since day one. And despite that sounds like a great story, that's never the case. Needless to say, my high school career was rough. Going through grade 9 and grade 10, I can't stress this enough when I say this, and I'm not exaggerating. I was literally the most hated kid in the entire school. First of all, I was one of, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 black kids in the school. And secondly, I brought a lot of it on myself. I acted out. I thought I was, had everything figured out. I hated authority. I was always talking shit, and I was always causing problems. And for that reason, the students hated me, the teachers hated me. It's just it just is what it is. And what ended up happening was that in grade 9 and 10, I just pretty much completely failed out. Like, I didn't go to class. I failed the majority of my classes in grade 9 and 10. And the one thing, though, that will always stick with me is that everyone told me I couldn't do it. Why are you failing out? It's because you don't have an understanding. You can't do this. You can't do math. You can't figure this out. And I was getting really frustrated because it was never that I couldn't do it. It's that I didn't care. I hated it. I didn't have a purpose for being. I didn't understand why I was in class. Why it doesn't make any sense for me to sit around and learn about civics and careers. I just didn't care. I didn't have a passion. I'd rather go play Halo 2. That's just kind of who I was at the time. And I think that started to put a bit of a chip on my shoulder. So once again, just constantly being the butt of every single joke in the school. I had, a very, very small group of friends. And once again, even in that scenario, like, I just did not fit in anywhere. So it didn't make sense for me to be going to class. So that's kind of the context that I came from. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think I tried to switch high schools midway through because I was so fed up with everything, which, looking back on it now would have been an absolutely horrible idea. But the point I'm trying to get across is that, it wasn't necessarily this linear path. And I think these were formative years in my life. And as I started moving on from there, I started understanding that if I wasn't motivated to do something, I just wasn't going to do it. So as we move forward, I want to share this picture with you guys. And this picture probably doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just a random picture of, me playing football back in the day. And one of the biggest things is that this picture meant so much to me because it was the first time I ever got an opportunity to see myself in a way that I felt was cool. And it was the first time that I was in a situation where looking at this picture, it was the first time I ever got a picture of this at all, and it was like mind-boggling for me. And the whole concept here was that going into grade 9 and 10, I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I ended up figuring out at some point, getting this inspiration that I really wanted to play football. And my goal in life was to play football in university. And things kind of started getting together now as I started seeing that there are things that I need to do if I want to accomplish this goal. Number one, I'm going to have to get into university. So I don't know how it happened. I somehow shifted my mindset completely, and I put myself into a situation where that entire summer I trained to try out for this football team. And to be clear, this was a traveling rep team. This wasn't, just some random house league. And I don't know how. I always give a huge shout out to my coaches of the Canada Knights football team, but some reason they let me onto that team. I want to be super clear here, hardcore bench warmer, 3 plays a game max. But I don't know what it was, and I still one day want to go and have a conversation with them, but somehow they let me onto the team. And that absolutely changed my life, my world. It galvanized the fact that, okay, I want to go after this goal. I want to play football in university and I want to make it happen. And ever since then, my entire life changed. And when I got back into grade 11, I just had a new sense of confidence. And as we go through it, I ended up graduating as an Ontario Scholar, 91% average, and this is from the kid that literally failed out all of his classes. So I always share this picture because it's nothing super special about the picture, but this picture inspired me because it was the first time I ever saw myself in what I thought was a cool picture, and I was so proud and I was so happy, and it kind of pushed me forward. So lo and behold, believe it or not, got to the University of Waterloo, was able to play football there for a couple of years. And it was just this amazing experience. And that's kind of where my high school career led into my university career. So give you guys a little bit of context, now I'm playing football in university, and that was my life, okay? I got into university for health because it was the only school in the country at the time that didn't require math. I still to this day am not a math guy. I love analyzing data. I'm good with numbers, but when it comes to calculus, algebra, anything at all, not for me. Probably one of the many reasons why I never became a coder. But when I was in this phase of my life, I was just your typical football guy. I lived with 6 other football guys, and the whole idea was that, if I could get $15 together to go to the bar on the weekend or hit Phil's and get $2 drinks, like that was like my life's goal. That was like the biggest thing I could push myself forward to, and it was, it was a great time. But as I was going through university, as I got into second year, I started kind of trying to figure out, what am I doing with my life? What do I want to be doing? And I don't know if you guys remember this, but Snapchat was just starting to get really, really big. And Snapchat got offered $3 billion by Facebook, and they turned it down. So to give you guys some context here, I didn't understand what $1 million was, let alone $3 billion. And at this point in time, I thought I wanted to be a dentist in first year, and my large amount of C's pretty much put me in a situation where I realized that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. So I was kind of a little bit lost again. So when I heard that, this toy, this app, I didn't understand there was a business behind apps. I didn't understand that there was, thousands of engineers and hundreds of millions of dollars that go into these apps and these businesses. I didn't understand that. I thought it was just a toy on your phone. So when I heard that number, it kind of everything just switched for me. And I understood that there's more than just the degrees in which you apply for to get into university or college. There's more than just going to college and becoming a trade. There's more than just going to university and getting a science degree or a math degree or a health degree. There's more you can do outside of that. And at the time, I didn't realize that. I thought you had to go to school and do something in your field. And I got open to this entire new world of business. So using that, this is where my business career started. So looking at it, I started off here with Tell. So in 2012, when we look back, kind of feeding off the back of that Snapchat story, me and 4 of my roommates got together and we decided, hey, you know what? Why don't we build an app? Snapchat did it. We can do it. We'll take our OSAP money. We'll put it together. We'll each put in $2,500, $5,000, and we'll make an app and be rich by the summer. It'll be perfect. Needless to say, that was not the case at all. This was my first failure. So Tell was our first failure. The whole idea with Tell was that it was pretty much Snapchat, but for messaging. So we didn't completely rip off Snapchat. Snapchat wasn't doing messaging yet. And we actually came up with the deadline feature. So the feature, this is before BlackBerry came out with it. We came up with this idea that if you sent a message and it didn't get opened by a certain period of time, if you set a timer, when the timer runs out, then the message never gets shown. So this was this amazing opportunity here to come in and dive into business for the first time. And the whole idea that I like to take or convey on this is that I had zero business experience, none whatsoever. Didn't understand what business was, didn't know how to incorporate a company, didn't know how to run Facebook ads, didn't know how to get PR, didn't know how to do any of that type of stuff. But I looked at it, figured why not take a shot at it, and we did it. And if I didn't fail at Tell, we wouldn't be where we're at today with True Local. All right. So after going through that, and that lasted about 6 months, a year maybe before we shut it down, I moved on to the next one. So during that time, after I finished up university, I ended up working in London full-time, so London, Ontario, my full-time job, and I got bored again and decided that I wanted to kind of dive into something new and see if we could start something. So what I did was I took what I learned from Tell. I took that you really got to be understanding of everyone's role and choosing your partners carefully. You also have to choose people that have a specific skill set, because me and my 4 friends before had no skill set whatsoever. We had no roles, no nothing. So I took those learnings and brought it into the next project that I co-founded, which was DashTask. And DashTask, the whole idea here was that we wanted to take the sharing economy model and bring it specifically into universities. So the whole idea was that if you needed someone to do your laundry or walk your dog or go to the liquor store for you, whatever you might want, you could post a little gig. That gig gets sent to people's phones. Anybody who wants to do it in the area can do it. You'll be like, hey, I want you to clean up after my house party. I'll pay you $20. That was kind of what ended up happening there. So we did that for a little while. That also ended up being a failure. So this is my second startup, second failure. This one wasn't as much of a failure as a mutual parting of ways. But either way, it didn't get off the ground. So that's where we're at now. Now, that plus Tell is what led us to where we're at today with True Local. All right. So True Local, like I mentioned before, in the past 4 years, we've gone from 10 employees, 20 employees, just being in Ontario, then just being in Alberta, then expanding into BC. We're now, like I said, 55 employees across the country. We've recently expanded into the US as well. And what True Local is all about is developing Canada's regional supply chains. And our goal now is to connect people to the source. And when we started the business, it was really just to solve the problem of people looking for value-added meat products. 100% grass-fed beef, RWA, so products raised without antibiotics, local products. That was the biggest thing we wanted to do, and we wanted to bring it online. However, as we started going through the past 4 years, we realized that we have a way bigger opportunity here to make an impact, and what we want to be doing is developing Canada's regional supply chains, like I mentioned. When you look at it, the national supply chains are fragile, and COVID was an awesome example of that. So what we want to do is facilitate and make it that it's equally as easy to shop with a farmer who's an hour and a half away as it is to go to the grocery store that's 5 minutes down the road. And that's what we're focusing on right now. So that's my background, that's my story. I really wanted to give you guys some context on that before I kind of dive into some of the learnings that I have, and hopefully some things that'll help you guys on your journey. But when you look at this, how do we grow True Local? Okay, so I have these sort of phases that I feel a lot of businesses end up going through, and I'm going to share those with you guys, and I'll kind of talk about how True Local navigated those phases. So to me, phase one of any business is the infrastructure phase, okay? And the infrastructure phase is pretty much figuring out how to run your business. If you have a drop shipping business, if you have a SaaS business, if you've got some sort of enterprise software business, if you've got a D2C, if you've got any D2C brand, if you've got a service-based business, you have an idea and you have a concept and you think you know how it's going to work. But in your first infrastructure phase, you are going to actually figure out how it works. If you're a D2C company, okay, your whole idea is that you are going to sell products directly to consumers. Well, how does that even work? Okay, well, you figure out that you need to have a logistics center, and you figure out that you need an inbound product, and you figure out that, okay, when someone puts an invoice, someone puts an order, that has to generate an invoice. You would then pack off that invoice, and then how are you getting it to the customer? Okay, well, you got to work with different couriers, or you got to do it yourself. Figuring out how to run the business, to me, is the infrastructure phase, and figuring out how to run it, not at scale, I wouldn't say it's at scale, but figuring out how to run it in your first sort of cohort of initial users. If you've got a enterprise SaaS company, you're building out some really, really cool software tools for businesses, well, you understand how you want it to work, but how does it actually work? How do you get your leads? How are you making sales? Well, you need to get some sort of lead generation plan in place, and then you have to hire sales reps, and then they have to have a full understanding of what they're pitching, and how do you make sure that your updates are being properly conveyed to the sales team, and then how do you close the deals, and how do you collect payment? Figuring out how all of this works, to me, is the infrastructure phase. And it really is just a straight hustle. Okay, it's a situation where you are going to probably promise things that you aren't prepared to deliver on, and what ends up happening is you have to find a way to deliver on that. Okay, so it's going to be straight hustle the whole way through. You're probably saying yes to every possible prospective client. I will do anything for you. I'll make it happen. Yes, we can have that feature. Yes, I can get you that order in 12 hours. Yes, we can make this happen. And you are going to figure out, as you problem solve these different things that you've committed to, or different fires that come up, as you problem solve and find ways to make those things happen, you will turn those things into process and standard operating practices. So infrastructure phase to me is the first step of building any sort of business, is figuring out how the business is going to work. And once again, this is after you've already come up with your idea and your business plan. Let's say you've launched the business, then you go into the infrastructure phase. So from the infrastructure phase, and for us with True Local, it was very much the D2C example I said. I'm like, okay, we want to sell this product to customers and we want to work with awesome local producers. Okay, well, where do we store the product? How do we get the product to the customer? Okay, this customer wants it, but they're willing to do it as long as we get them the order tomorrow. Well, we don't deliver yet. Okay, I guess I'll drive it out there. You know, all of these different things. How do we manage inventory? How do we stock inventory? How do we forecast purchasing? These are all things that you start a business, and if you're anything like me at all, you just kind of see the end game. You're like, okay, we're gonna get a lot of customers. Done. Okay, there's a lot of other operational things that have to go into that. So moving on from the infrastructure phase, to me, there's the customer acquisition phase. And a lot of different ways to look at this. However, to me, the customer acquisition phase is once you figured out how to run your business, okay, how hypothetically, if you had a lot of customers coming in, how would you service those customers or those clients? That's the infrastructure phase. Well, now once you've got that figured out, you're in the customer acquisition phase, okay? And now it's understanding and testing and figuring out how you actually get customers, aka how you actually grow your business. Okay, so it's pretty much figuring out the hard way how to get customers and clients, because you're going to try everything. All right, you're going to go down the obvious routes. You're going to go down the paid acquisition routes. You're going to go do paid acquisition on Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, Google, all these different places. Okay, but you're going to start to realize that anything that is very easy and very obvious is very saturated at the same time. And the businesses that last, the businesses that do well, are businesses that have creative and unique customer acquisition strategies. If you're just going to go ahead and go on social media or go on Facebook or go and do paid advertising, you'll be fine in the early days. But as you get to scale and you have to start spending more and more money to acquire these customers, you're going to realize that it's hyper competitive. So you need to get really creative on how you're acquiring customers, especially if you have a high ticket price, right? D2C has some best practices that you can use out the gate. However, once again, if you're in enterprise software sales or if you're selling a service, you got to figure out how to get these customers coming in. And to me, that's the whole creativity phase. So you know how to service these customers, you know, in the early stages. Once again, it's going to change completely when you start getting into scaling, but you know how you would service them. Well, now you got to figure out how you're actually going to get these customers. So when you couple both of these phases together, you know how to run the business, and now you know how to get customers, all right? So that leads you into the scaling phase. And I think there's a lot of controversy around the concept of scaling. Like, when are you scaling? What's pre-scaling? What actually is scaling? One of the biggest things I want to stress is that scaling is not just growing, okay? That's growth. Scaling is growing your business while optimizing your operations and your key metrics and your margins and your product at the same time, to the point where as you scale, your business is actually getting better. It's very easy to grow a business and let all of your different KPIs, OKRs, all of your different metrics fall to the wayside. That's very simple. But properly scaling is growing your business while at the same time making your processes more efficient, all right? So this is a high risk phase. Ironically, when you talk about most investors, when you talk about going into your Series A and things like that, you're typically going in the scaling round, and usually people will spend more money because you've already got your proof of concept. But when I look at the scaling phase, I think it's very high risk, because now what you're doing is you're saying you've got your infrastructure phase, you understand how to run the business, and now you already understand how to acquire your customers. Well, now what you're about to do is you're about to pour fuel on that fire, and you're about to double down on what you believe you know from your infrastructure phase and your customer acquisition phase. So yes, you've got some proof of concept here, but you're about to go all in on those strategies. So to me, when I look at the scaling phase, it's very high risk, because if you're wrong or you're off or you're not optimizing and tweaking all the way through to make sure that you're continuously growing while making the business run better, then you're going to run into a situation where you might be going down the wrong path. So to me, the infrastructure phase, the customer acquisition phase, and the scaling phase are all really, really important. It's kind of how we looked at building True Local. So once again, when we look at the customer acquisition phase, we've come up with a lot of different unique customer acquisition tools that are above and beyond just your typical D2C paid advertising. And when we look at the scaling phase, when we did Ontario, the whole idea was, okay, can we replicate this in Alberta better, quicker, faster? And then could we do the same thing in BC, and then obviously the same thing in the US? So these are the phases that I went through. And once again, I don't think these are any like super, you're not gonna find these in any books or anything. These are just things that I felt really applied. And when I looked back, I felt like I went through these phases. All right. So moving on from there, that's more True Local related, but I did want to give you guys some tips from myself. Once again, I'm 29. And I've got 4 tips that I think any person looking to go into business or looking to be an entrepreneur, be a founder, should know if you're under the age of 30, because it's a totally different game and a totally different field that you're playing in. If you don't have that credibility or that experience, if you don't have that, hey, I'm 45, I've built 3 or 4 businesses, and you need to respect me because of X, Y, Z. When you're under the age of 30, you have to earn every piece of respect. You have to earn every ear that listens to you. You have to earn the fact that your employees will follow you when you're making risky calls. You've got to earn the fact that when you tell them to do something that they don't believe in, that they think it might be somewhere else, you've got to earn the respect that they know that you've weighed out all the options and you're doing what's best. So I want to try to give you guys some tips on things that I've found throughout that time. So one of the biggest ones for me was starting off, you have to decide what type of business you're building, okay? Because consistency is key as a leader. And I see a lot of people start their businesses without an end goal in sight, and that is the trickiest thing of all. So when you're looking at this, I look at 3 different types of businesses. You've got your lifestyle businesses, and your lifestyle businesses are the ones that are relatively smaller. It's not necessary that they're smaller, but typically they're profitable out of day one. You're only really investing your profits in the business, and it's something that, could be anything from, maybe 1 to 5 employees. And nowadays there's, 5 employee companies doing $50 million, right? I wouldn't necessarily call that a lifestyle business, but these are more of the smaller scale typically, and you're not going to go raise a bunch of money for it. You're just going to grow at an organic pace. And it's typically, you look at this when you look at some various drop shipping companies, consulting companies, things like that. All right. Then the next stage is your venture businesses. All right. Now, venture-backed businesses are businesses where pretty much you get that old, Silicon Valley mantra of growth at all costs. These are businesses that you are going to have an idea, have a business model, and realize that if you want to be successful in it, you have to move quickly. You're going to bring in all the staff. You want to bring in all the team. You're going to burn money every single month to reach a certain growth trajectory in which then you will flip the switch and try to focus on building a sustainable business. And that's typically the venture model. So you'll be raising a lot of money to do this. You'll be in the red for a long time, but you'll be pretty much growing very aggressively, very quickly. And typically the end game here for a founder is a quick acquisition. So, it could be, 1 to 5 years. And the whole idea here is that they want to focus on building the business as quick as they can and then getting acquired. Finally, you've got the legacy/empire style businesses. These are the businesses that are either a passion project, something that you believe in deeply and you have no interest of selling, but you want to make this as big as possible, whether it be a business you want to hand down to your family, whether it be a business that wants to change the world. Maybe it's R&D related. Maybe you've got some really, really cutting edge technology you want to focus on, but really the focus is that, no, you're in this for 10 years minimum, and that you want to put your name behind this. Okay, so those are the 3 different types of businesses that I think you can kind of bucket them into, and not one is better than the other. There's no business that is a better business model. There's none of these that are superior to the other. It's just understanding which one you are, because when questions start coming up like, should I hire? Okay, should I invest in this? Should I develop my product? Should I raise money? Should I sell? Depending what type of business you've chosen, those answers are going to be completely different. The answer to should you raise money is going to be vastly different if your goal is to run a lifestyle business than it is if it's to run a venture business. Okay, so if you're asking for advice, or you're doing first of all the one right thing, which is asking for advice. But if you're asking for advice from people and you don't understand what type of business you want to build, you could be getting led in the wrong direction, because you're getting advice on businesses, or you're getting advice for a business that is a venture business or a legacy style business. Okay, so it's really important that you understand what type of business that you want to build, because when you do start hiring people, you need to know that. You need to tell and be able to give a guiding star to your team members and tell them this is what we're going after. Because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what the end game is for your business, it'll be very difficult to have people respect you as a founder, as a leader, as a CEO. All right. So give up the superstar mentality. And I think this is really relevant for people age, 18 to 30. So in that age group, especially if you're coming from the sales, and my background, I did a background in sales. Typically it's very competitive. It's very dog eat dog. There are very few BDR roles or very few sales roles that aren't very, very competitive, where you want to be the number one superstar. And one of the number one things that you have to understand is that just because you're a good player doesn't mean you make a great coach. And you can look at that in tons of sports analogies. And the understanding is that if you're a superstar, typically it's you, like it's me. You're always focused on being number one. You want to outshine everybody and you want to do that. And that's great on a sales team. And that's great as an employee. To be honest, there's nothing wrong with being competitive as an employee and wanting to go after it. But as soon as you move into management, or as soon as you move into a leadership role, all of that has to go out the window. So as a leader, it's no longer your responsibility to be the superstar. Instead, it's your job to bring the best out of your team. And that was something that hit me really hard, and I was fortunate because my last job, I was there for 4 years, and year one, I was one of the number one sales rep in the company, and I was 21 at the time. And when I moved into management at 22, I got so fortunate to understand that experience where I was like, okay, if I want this branch to do well, and I want my goals to be achieved, I can no longer be an individual contributor. I can no longer be the number one individual contributor. I have to make sure that the team around me is the focus, is my focus. I'm working for them. And that's something you have to understand, is that if you want to be a leader, your employees are not working for you, you're working for them. So if you want to be that superstar, if you want to be that rock star, you really got to reevaluate what type of role you want to have in your business if you want to be a leader or not. Leading by example is one thing, but being the number one and trying to always take the spotlight and be the front and center and take all of the, all the glory and whatever you're going after is not going to work, especially if you're trying to manage under the age of 30. All right, hiring. This is one that, God, this is always a tricky one, especially in your first couple of years. What are you looking to do here? Are you looking to hire for hustle? Are you looking to hire a jack of all trades? Or are you looking to hire for experience? And what I can tell you from my experience, it's a very difficult question. And we've done every different aspect of it. We looked at it in the early days where it's like, wow, if we can just get this rock star, this individual, a ton of experience into the business, then we'll be leaps and bounds ahead and it'll be perfect. And you hear it all the time. Hire someone for where you're going to be in 2 years, right? Hire someone that can grow into that role. And personally, I think that's completely wrong. Because who's to say that you're going to get to that 2-year mark if you are doing hires 2 years out? Hiring someone with experience, someone who's used to an organization that would have 2 years out the type of process and procedures and culture in place. For me in the early days, what you need more than anything, what you need more than experience is hustle. You need people that are going to ride and die for your business. And whether that be friends, whether that be family, you always hear, don't hire friends, don't hire family. Well, my first 10 employees were friends and family. And I'm pretty much here standing telling you guys that if you can't work with friends and family, it's probably a you thing, not necessarily a them thing. So don't discount hiring friends and family early on because you hear people say it's a bad thing. If you treat your team well, especially your friends and family, they will be the make or break between what gets you to that point. So if you're looking to hire, don't go for that super high-end executive. Don't go for that individual. Go for someone that is going to come in and day out, okay? Because if you get that executive or if you get that really high-end hire, someone who's trying to say that, hey, I can help take you to the next level, I just need this much more, they're the 9-to-5ers. They're the ones that check out at 5 o'clock. They don't respond to you on the weekend. When you have a crisis and you have to be at the warehouse, or you have a crisis and your platform is crashing, those aren't the ones that are going to pick up the phone at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. You want to hire those people in the early days because really just getting through your first year, getting through your infrastructure phase, figuring out how to understand the business, that's your priority number one. And yes, experience can help solve some problems for you, but at the end of the day, you need the hustle. You need people that are like that. So my personal recommendation is in the early days, especially year one, you want to hire people that care about your business, they share your vision, and that are going to go above and beyond for the business, even if they don't have all the experience in the world. And then last but not least, this one's a really tricky one, making decisions as a leader, okay? This is the hardest one, and you look at it all the time, and as a founder, as an entrepreneur, it's your job to make decisions. That's pretty much your entire job. Make a decision. Make a decision to guide your team, make a decision on whether or not to raise money, make a decision whether or not to launch a product, all these different decisions. And I've seen it and I've experienced it so many times where you get this decision paralysis, you have no idea what to do. And it wasn't until last year, so this is a recent lesson for me, that I started understanding that the quality of my decisions obviously directly impact my team, but instead of spending a lot of time thinking about a decision, you gotta shift that mentality and look at it more like this. If you've got decision A and decision B, okay, it doesn't matter which one you choose. Your job is to make the best of the decision that you did make. So instead of living trying to figure out what should I do, and overthinking it, make a decision and then make the best out of that decision. So when you look at it, even if you just chose option A and it turned out that, damn, option A was not as good as option B, okay? It sets you back a little bit further. No problem. You're in option A now. don't dwell on what option B could have been. Make option A better than option B. And that's a really good way to start working through decision-making process. It's a great way to boost your own confidence. It's a great way to boost your problem-solving ability. And it's a great way to be a leader to your team when you're able to make decisions confidently, because you know that even if it's the wrong decision, you will work through it and get back to that point. So pretty much, I think that's the biggest thing. So as a founder, CEO, it's not your job to make all the right decisions, but it is your job to make the most out of the decisions that you do make. And that was something that really, really helped me. And it really caused me to reflect on some of the decisions I made in the past and how long I've dwelled on them. So all in all, those are my 4 tips that personally I feel really help any entrepreneur, any founder, any leader under the age of 30. These are things that I think anybody can use. But once again, if you're young, people are going to, and it's unfortunate, but they're going to discredit you. They're not going to take you as seriously as someone with experience, which is okay because you don't have the experience. So it's your job to learn these lessons as fast as possible. And these are things that really, really helped me. All right. So real quickly, I love giving you guys some resources, just if there's ever anything that you guys are looking to get into, some things that have really helped me. So books, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, Ben Horowitz did it. It's an amazing book, kind of talking about some of the challenges that you'll face as a CEO, and just kind of puts into perspective that your problems could be a lot worse. So definitely look at that one. Be Our Guest is the Disney customer service book. Disney is one of the most impressive companies on the planet. Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, blows my mind every time I listen to him talk. And if you've ever visited Disneyland, I went there last year and I thought I was going to be like, okay, ride a bunch of rides and some kid stuff. As an entrepreneur, it blew my mind at how efficient and well run that place is. So Be Our Guest is a great book. From Good to Great, another amazing book, kind of really isolating what are some of the common takeaways and common trends in businesses that have gone from good to great and just pretty much outperformed the market. 12 Rules of Life, great individual book. If you're just looking to kind of, figure yourself out a little bit more, it's from Jordan Peterson. There's My Morning Routine, Delivering Happiness, and Rocket Fuel. So just a bunch of other books that I have. If you want, you're more than happy to message me and I can talk to you a little bit more about it. TV, this isn't exactly documentary educational or anything, but it is startup related and they're entertaining shows. Halt and Catch Fire, Startup, Silicon Valley. YouTube interviews, if you're ever looking to understand kind of how the other side lives, how these Fortune 500 company CEOs live, watch some CEO interviews. Bob Iger, once again, talk about Disney, Mindy Grossman, any of these people that have done successful businesses, they're really worth looking at their interviews. I didn't realize that CEOs did interviews like this, different panels, until about 2 years ago. And I started watching them, and it really kind of helps with your own speaking. It helps with understanding, what makes a good leader. And then, of course, Billions and Succession, just great shows, about hustle. Podcasts, Master of Scale, Startup Stories, Business Wars, How I Built This, Joe Rogan. I put a link here. You can listen to my most recent podcast as well, the D2C Growth Show. So, just educate yourself, spend some time. There's never enough learning that you can do when it comes to being an entrepreneur or being a founder. And I think a lot of these things will help you guys a lot. So once again, thank you guys so much. I'm wishing you guys all the best. If you ever want to reach out to me at all, you got my LinkedIn right here, Instagram, email. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm wishing you guys all the best in the future.